and Joanne passed shortly after Bob did. That left a huge gap in the fight. They left way too soon. But the reason I shared this story with you is that during the time that I was taking Bob back and forth to Dana-Farber for 8 months, I never had to worry about food for him. I never had to worry about would my daughters have enough to eat while we were paying for the medical bills, while we were paying for gas. How many of us know someone who's fighting an illness or lost their job or other situations and they don't have food? We can't give up this fight. It's why so many of you arrived today. As I started the story about Joanne and how she sustained her passion. I remember one story about Joanne was a very spiritual person, as many of you know. And she would start the day, each day with prayer. And when they put in an intercom system with the phone, she was trying to figure out how to use it. So you never knew which button she was going to push. But Joanne would get on the intercom and say the prayer, and then at the end of it say, now get back to work. I mean, she was practical. You got to get on with feeding people. You know? That was Joanne. But how do we sustain passion during this time? It can be overwhelming. I met with a group 2 years ago in August where they were saying, just get us food. And then I went to, a year ago, the Eastern Regional Conference, the first time ever being held in Maine by Feeding America. And people sitting there were asking Feeding America, just get us food. We need food. We need to find ways. So how do we sustain this passion? I believe there are 4 ways. Write these down. Commitment, collaboration, creativity, and connecting. Commitment, collaboration, creativity, and connecting. The first one's commitment. Commitment for fighting the fight. I went on a donor visit to a CEO. And it was our annual visit to the CEO. And the CEO looked at us, another member of the food bank, and the CEO looked at us and said, you know, I know there are people out there that are hungry, but I feel like it's just going into a black hole. And I looked at him and said, no, it's not. It's not going into a black hole. We are committed to this. And we're finding ways to stretch, look at finding a grant to bring all of you here today. We're looking at ways to work to fight. Some days it may feel like it's going into a black hole for us, but we have to stay with commitment. This winter, I was spring skiing, and I was putting on my ski boots, and there was a table next to me of people who, I'm not sure if they were skiing or eating for the day, but they were talking about their community and some people that were hungry. And they started being very negative, and they had this perception of who the people were and what they were doing. and the kinds of things that they were eating. And I now picture this. I'm bent over, trying very hard not to speak, and if anybody knows me, that's very hard. And I glanced up at my husband, and I said, can't listen and not say something. And he's just like, I just want to get out on the slope. And I said, excuse me a minute. It's me. I've worked for the effort of feeding people for a very long time. And I didn't go through all my credentials of it. I just gave a short version of a long time. And I said, some of the things you're saying are just not true about people that are hungry. And instead of quickly getting out on the slopes, I stayed with them and had a whole conversation. By the end of the conversation, they were speaking in terms of what was positive that they could do in their community. We changed the dialogue that we were having. And that's what we have to do. We have to keep talking about this and making sure that the story is honest, authentic, true, but not ignoring conversations where people may not be engaged in having all the knowledge. Keeping the story alive. Yesterday, I spent 2 hours with a very close friend of mine who is in final stages of cancer. And we were at the Maine Cancer Community Center. She's a master gardener. And she wasn't doing well, and they were getting ready to admit her. And she looked at me, and she said, Diane, she said, I'm really worried about my garden at the public library. Because what she does is she planted a garden that goes to the local pantry. That's commitment. The next thing is collaboration. And many of you have collaborated with us over the years. At Good Shepherd Food Bank, we've taken several efforts in terms of collaboration. We've tapped into engineers to help us look at our facilities. We've worked with transportation companies on logistics. We've solicited the ideas of experts on sustainability and changed all the light bulbs in the warehouse. We've worked with communities where jobs were lost and found ways to help people in times of need. We've collaborated with farmers, as many of you know, to look at best ways we can help them glean their crops. And we've continued to work with all of you in an effort to say, how can we do this differently? Which brings me to creativity. Our communities are changing, they're struggling, and we know that. Bringing creativity into every aspect needs to be part of how we are fighting this fight. The old ways are not going to work, and new ideas need to be brought together. That is what I hope that you're able to do at this conference today. If you hear one thing that you can take back, then it's made a difference. Many of you, I know, have a hard time just being here and taking the time. If we look at creativity, amazing things can happen when we come together. We held a summit, some of you may have attended, where we brought business leaders together and farmers together and agencies together and everybody that we knew or thought of to come together. And we just asked, think of small ideas, not the big ideas, but let's start with small ideas. And the people in the room really came up with some wonderful things. Things like, I can go back to work and ask everybody to empty out their change drawers. And with that money, I can give it to the food pantry. Or I might not have a place place for a big enough garden in my backyard, but what about planting some small seedlings on my back porch and donating that? Small ideas can lead to big ideas. Creativity, it leads us to solutions instead of focusing on problems. The last one that I want to speak to is connecting. Connecting is different than collaborating. Over the years, I've done a lot of coaching of non-profit EDs. And I was sitting down one day with a ED who had been an ED, I think at the time, for 20 years. And I asked her a key question, which I really encourage you to ask yourself today. And I asked her, what motivates you? And I usually ask this question 3 times. But with this particular person, asking what motivates you brought tears to her eyes. And she said, you know what? I've been so busy that I've lost sight of the people that I'm serving. I've been behind my desk, and I need to get back out. And that's exactly what she did. She went back out and really began spending part of every single week with the people that she was serving. And I think today that we are overwhelmed with communication. We're overwhelmed with information that's coming through our doors, social media, everything today. And we can be so busy that we lose sight of the face of hunger. And if you think about it, and you look around your table, somebody at your table, based on the statistics, is food insecure. We cannot lose sight of the Carolines. We cannot lose sight on the people that we're trying to serve. And each morning, we can get up and we can say, who am I going to impact today? How can I make a difference? When I decided to step down as chair for Good Shepherd Food Bank, it wasn't an easy decision. It's been part of me for a very long, long time. Total of 17 years. But I know that in stepping away doesn't mean that I have not been thinking of people or not continuing the effort. It's part of why I'm here today. Carolyn's still singing to me. Bob and Joanne are still very much the voices on my shoulders. I want to thank you for your willingness to be here today and taking the time. And when you leave this conference, I hope you'll reflect back on who touched you to be part of this work and what motivates you and how best you can use the talents and gifts from others to sustain the passion in the good times and bad. And I want to thank Joanne, Bob, Carolyn, and all of you for making a difference. Thank you.